What's up, everybody? Today we're going to sculpt LAGO from Resident Evil 4. In the original Resident Evil 4 as well as the remake, they chose to do two different character designs. The original has dry skin and worms protruding from the mouth, whereas in the remake it has slicker, darker skin and worms that only protrude from the body. In the remake it also has larger teeth that are in multiple rows with some human-like teeth kind of behind those rows of teeth inside of the mouth. For my design, I've taken elements of both of these. I chose to do the larger teeth of the remake, the worms protruding from the body, but I also kept elements of the original, like that nice pattern on the skin, the worms protruding from the mouth, and a few little things here and there. I think that I found a really good balance to honor both games. If you look at this concept art, I kind of based my design off of this. It has worms protruding from the body and the mouth, which is what I ended up going with in the end. And I'm really happy with the design I chose to use for this sculpture. I've wanted to sculpt this since I was like a little kid. It's gonna be super cool, so let's get right into it. Alright everybody, let's get right into it. The first thing I'm doing is I'm making an armature and an armature stand. So we use a little bit of hardwood, drill a hole in it, hammer a small piece of coat hanger into it, and now I'm just rolling out that tin foil. For our monster's body, I know that the tail is going to be flat vertically while the body is going to be flat horizontally. So as I'm rolling out that tin foil, I'm keeping that in mind and I'm getting that nice general body shape. So now when I'm adding the clay, the bulk of it is that tin foil material. And we can just add right on. I have a good idea of the design I want. I based a lot of the design beyond what's in the games. I took a look at yellow spotted salamanders and blue spotted salamanders, and I looked at their body, the anatomy of them, their tail shape. That was exactly what I wanted for this, so I based almost all of the design choices for the tail and the body off of those salamanders. We're just going through and texturing, putting emphasis on the spine and on the sides, and then those middle points between, and creating a bunch of little contours and textures between all of those things. It feels like the skin is stretching over these, internal parts, and it adds a lot to the texture as well as the realism of the piece. Now we're going to get started on the teeth. I'm just rolling out a bunch of different teethy, spiky shapes out of clay, and then we just bake them all in the oven and get them nice and hard so that I can poke them into the gums. It's important in this step to have a lot of different kinds of teeth and probably too many teeth just in case. We want to have a lot of different types of teeth for a lot of different situations so that we don't have to go back and make more later. Helps with the flow of the sculpture. Now we're just adding a little more texture into the sculpture, blending it out a little bit. The entire time that I'm working, I'm looking at the sculpture, I'm looking at reference images, and I'm thinking, that skin's a little too smooth, that skin could use this, that skin could use that. And I just go in and with my fingers or with silicone tools, ball styluses, or dental tools, I just go in and shape these things, and then once I'm done shaping them, I blend it out, and then I shape it, and I blend it out. So between everything I do, I'm blending it so that it's not so dramatic in the skin, especially with ball styluses. Now he's got all his feet and his top row of teeth. We're going to go in, and we're going to use some metal floral wire to make the worms. Now, the worms coming out of the mouth, I'm covering in clay as well, and then I'm just poking them right into the inside of the mouth, and then we'll glue them down later as well, just to make sure they stay really well in place. I wanted to do this step before I put in the bottom row of teeth, because it's just, it's going to be a lot easier to work around these than it will be to work around the teeth. Putting, like, you know, if I were putting the tentacles in after the teeth, right? This wire is very dynamic. It's super useful for a lot of things, and it's really cheap too. During this step, if any of the teeth do happen to fall out, whenever I bake it, there will still be the divot for the tooth as well, so I can just bake the sculpture and then glue the teeth into the teeth holes that I made during this step. So it's not insanely important that the teeth stay in. It's just more marking where the teeth will be, and then I can refine that later on. We're just poking these right into the body. These things being poked into the body gives it a really nice effect, in my opinion, because it actually looks like it's coming out of the body. If I had put clay on them, it would blend too much together with the body, and it would just look like, oh, those are part of the body, not a separate entity. But now it's ready to be baked in the oven. We're going to put it in the oven at 275 for about an hour, maybe an hour 15 minutes. Now that it's nice and hardened in the oven, we can go in, and I'm painting it with Mod Podge mixed with black paint. This is a great base coat layer. I know I've talked a lot about this. Anyone who does stuff like this needs to mix Mod Podge with their black paint or whatever base coat color paint you're gonna use. Honestly, it's just great, and it really helps hold down all of those little wormy dealy wire things that I stuck into the sculpture as well. So, killing two birds with one stone. Now I'm going in with some gray and kind of just dry brushing it. We still want that black color to shine through, but we want to cover most of it. This is similar to dry brushing. It's like we want to just get drier and drier the more layers we put on, so that all of these different colors are shining through. While I painted this, I was actively and constantly mixing gray, kind of a burgundy red, pink, and then bits of yellow here and there even, and getting all of these different colors so that they would all shine through. Dark purple, light pink, you know. Never really painted anything like this, but I still stuck to going from dark colors to light colors, and I think it turned out really, really amazing. There's a lot of emphasis on the texture, and you can still see all those dark recesses in it, and that makes it really grungy and grimy, you know, horror-y. I think that I captured the texture really well. Now we're going in and painting the teeth individually, kind of touching stuff up here and there. The inside of the mouth was definitely the hardest spot to paint, so I tried to keep it the simplest as well. Just gray on all the teeth, and that nice bloody red inside of the whole mouth. And then I did a little bit of that purplish mixed color on the tentacles, and then a little bit of a brighter whitish color on the tentacles here. The final layer I wanted to do is a metallic white. It's more of a pearl white. It says it's metallic white. This is very transparent. And what this does is it adds a nice reflective layer on top, but without obscuring the colors underneath as well. So it's really great for that. Now that we have everything painted up, the next step is going to be to build our case. I'm using plexiglass style acrylic sheets that I just cut by hand, and I'm doing all the edges with this frog tape to get it lined up how we want it. I like to do this to start off and kind of make the foundation with this frog tape, and then later we can go in and make it waterproof and reinforce it. We need it to be waterproof, by waterproof I mean so that we could fill it with water and none would leak out, so that when I pour the resin later, we'll have a nice clean pour in our nice clean tank that we made. So that's pretty much all I'm doing here, getting all the tape down, and then we'll go in with some hot glue. Using just a regular hot glue gun, I made sure it got nice and hot so that I could get a good, smooth, consistent push of glue. I need to use a lot of glue when I do this, so I want it to be nice and hot where I can just keep the glue coming, keep it coming, you know, and so just leave it on probably a half hour, make sure you don't forget and burn your house down. And you can see I pour the water right in and none leaks out whatsoever. I was optimistic, so I also checked the corners to make sure it goes all the way up all the corners, and it does. So, perfect. I'm using acrylic dowel rods in the bottom of all of our parts of this here, and we're just going to glue that right in place with some hot glue and hold it up with pretty much any object. You just hold it up until the glue dries, and that'll be great. Now I wanted to make a little boat and a little Leon to go with it, because the fight is just so iconic. He's cool by himself, but whenever I pictured sculpting this, I always pictured like Leon swimming away from the monster. You know, you get knocked out of the boat in the original Resident Evil 4 and you gotta mash X to swim away from the monster, and he's like coming up behind you. I really wanted to do that for this sculpture, so I figured, you know what, we're gonna have to make a boat. So this is my first attempt at woodworking ever. I started off and I went in with a Japanese handsaw for wood to cut. I have like some soft wood that I ordered for this project, and then I go in and Dremel it down into the general shape after I cut it. And then we're chiseling out the center of the boat where you would like sit inside of the boat. Once I had that chiseled out quite a bit, I decided it was like taking too long, so I just went in with the Dremel here and Dremeled the absolute hell out of it. Once I had it where I wanted it, I used the handsaw to do a groove into the front of the boat so I could stick that little post. You know, a lot of those boats have that nice little post, so I took a toothpick, glued it right in. Now we're using wood stain to give it a nice stained color. I knew that I wanted to do the wood stain, but I also knew that the boat needed to be a little more gray. Gray is like the thematic color of this whole thing. Everything has a little bit of gray, so I dry brush gray over the whole thing for the most part, other than I think the floor of the boat I might have left stained like that, and it turns out pretty good. Just putting an extra little piece of wood going across there to make it more boat-like. Now here I'm painting this little piece of clay that I made to be the motor. I painted it to look rusty, so I have this dark red, this really bright orange, and then a little bit of gray, and I kind of just layered those colors over top of each other to try to get the best rust effect I could for the lowest effort. I put some little pieces of metal, it's more of that floral wire, right into the boat to look like the harpoons that Leon throws at it. Then I use a treble fishing hook, which I'm painting with all those same rusty colors to be the anchor of the boat that sits right on the front of it. The next thing I want to make is Leon swimming in the water, so I'm taking some of that floral wire again, and I'm twisting it together into the general shape, and then we take clay and just wrap it right around the armature. Has that general shape of a guy swimming, and then I'm just laying down the general indications of clothing. I didn't even put feet on him. Honestly, it would have been pointless to, because the resin's going to obscure a lot of these details. But it's important that we lay down that there is a shirt, that there are pants, that there is hair. It's just going to all be blurred later. So it's important not to put too much effort into these details as well. I think that using this gold paint allows for the light to hit him a little better and might make him a little easier to see later, but we'll have to see later on in the video here. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I did for Del Lago, and we'll use hot glue to glue all of our little pieces into place. This way they're held up so that when we pour our resin, they'll be at the correct height, hopefully. Alright, so now I have all my parts in place, like that, the scene in Resident Evil during the boss fight where you swim away from Del Lago, and we can get ready to pour our resin. Now for the resin, I'm mixing in a bunch of different dyes to try to mimic the color of the water in the game. So we use black, brown, blue, and green in different quantities there. And I use a whole gallon of resin. That's $100 worth of resin. I also put all of these nice little leafy chunks in there. But as it dries, the heat generated will push those out of the position they're in. I just thought that it would be nice. It really adds some character to it to have those nice dead leaves in the water, because that's more laggy, you know. Once the resin's dried for a few days here, or cured I should say, then we can take a look at it. Now in the boat, around the boat, we had oxygen releasing from the heat and the chemical reaction, and so we have all these bubbles in the boat. That means that I need to go in and I need to touch up the boat. We can also see that the resin is a little higher than it was whenever I poured it, so Leon is way further down than I had expected, and the boat is just about level with the water. It looks like it's taking on a little bit of water. So I'm going in with my Dremel tool and I'm getting rid of all these bubbles and drilling out all these bubbles. And then I go in with a knife and I score as much of this as I can. What that does is it allows UV resin to fill in and fill these cracks, and while UV resin is around and touching these white scratched up looking parts, you can't see the whiteness at all. They'll turn back to being clear. So this is a quick, easy fix, honestly. I just went in with my Dremel tool. The one problem I had here was I scratched up the floor of the boat a little bit, but I actually think that that's fine. It adds a bit of character, and it's under the water anyways, so who really cares, right? It's not like the most important detail of the thing. And during this step with the UV resin, I decided to try to reinforce the worms on the back. Going in here now with some Woodland Scenics, water ripples and water waves. Now this stuff is amazing. All I do is I hold the brush pointing outwards, like sideways, along where I want the ripples to go and I want the wave to go. So as you can see, I'm emphasizing the movement of this monster with these ripples right now. That means that all of the ripples come out from the monster, and it makes it feel way realer than it would had I not done this step. This is actually my first time using this stuff, but I am hooked. This is a great product. I will use this every single time I want water ripples. And once we've laid all of our ripples down, then I go in with the waves. and I actually used the flow of the ripples to figure out where I wanted my waves to be. You know, when a boat is kind of cruising along and you see that water shooting out from underneath it on each side, I took a look at that and I said, that's how I want my waves to be. So now I go in with the water waves in a popsicle stick, and it's thick. You know, I'm just thickly putting it on there, and I know exactly where I want my waves to be. I'm outlining these ripples, and they just blend together beautifully. I'm so happy with how easy this part of the process was, because I think it's also one of the most amazing looking parts of the process. So it being so, I shouldn't say low effort, but so easy to do and actually pretty fun to do as well. It just makes the whole thing a much more enjoyable process. Things don't need to be so complicated. If it's perfect on the first try, then that's always the best, hands down. This stuff has a work time of about 10 minutes, I believe. So what I'm trying to do here is lay it down in the general position and then kind of fluff up the each individual wave and give it that flow in the direction that I want it. I'm literally sculpting the surface of the water and have full control over it using these products. And it turns out friggin' amazing, honestly. I'm so happy with how this project ended up. This is the finished result. I didn't show putting the feet on, but the bottom of it wasn't perfectly level due to how the resin cured. So I actually did sand down the bottom a bit, and I installed feet into the bottom of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games, and for a long time, I've been searching YouTube, waiting for someone to sculpt Del LAGO, and here it is. Thanks so much for watching. Actually, before I go, this sculpture is going to be my first sculpture for sale on my Etsy shop. Check out the summary, the description, whatever you call it. There will be a link to my Etsy shop. If you're interested in buying this sculpture, I would appreciate it so much. And I'm going to have a bunch of other stuff on my Etsy shop soon as well. So check that out if you're interested, or if you want to support the channel in some way, or if you want to commission your own custom sculpture. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the glue. You guys are the Mod Podge that holds it all together. Have a great day.